are fully understood, and that the thing operates the way it's supposed to operate. You've got to have oversight of delivery, contract variation, you've got to monitor the outputs, and you've got to be able to flag problems before they really get severe. So what we do, and I'll just highlight this, on service delivery problems and any breaching, you've got to distinguish between what we call major and minor breaches. So a major breach would be that this room, the mechanical system is so loud that you can't lecture in the room. That would be major. You can't use the room. A minor breach would be if the temperature wasn't really, it took till 10 o'clock rather than 9 o'clock to get the temperature. That would be a minor breach. So in service delivery, you've got to make sure that you know the difference between minor and major breaches. Availability is really the key issue for government. I mean, if the facility isn't available, then, particularly if it's based on availability, then you've got a problem. If the road begins to sink because the base or drainage, or there was a heavy rain and the culvert or the pipe size didn't drain properly and the road washed out and it was closed for 6 weeks, that would be a big issue for government. Public risk. The government cannot shift the risk for public safety and well-being for the consumers and workers. And so if there is any risk, the government has to exercise the right to step in to prevent or mitigate serious risk. So let's say that in the building, somehow, let's say radon gas or something came in, and someone came in and the media measured the radon. Do you know what radon gas is? It's a natural radioactive gas that comes up through foundations. I'm just using it as an extreme. But let's say the media come in and they measure the air quality and they find out that there's radon and et cetera, and the building gets closed and the media makes a big issue out of it. And the government says, well, we don't have any choice. We're going to have to step in because it's the health of our workers. And that can happen. Asset risk, basically, often, do you know what the term force majeure is? Do people know what that is?
Act of God.
Yeah. It's where Hurricane Katrina would be a force majeure. Things that no one could anticipate. These are going to become more important. As I mentioned back to the impact of global warming, we're finding now that we're having to deal with extremes that we never thought about. So that's another factor. So there is risk to the asset itself. And so it could affect the life of the facility. We have operating risk. We may find that with the advent of computers, that the power supply in the building is not sufficient. That we have to, or that there's not a dependable source of power, and we have to up the size of the standby power source. Sponsorship risk. What happens if they get in trouble? Developer A may be doing very well in this project, but the highway that they have in Spain is now in default. We just had a company, a very big German company, pull back, sell all their assets off about a month ago. And so what you may have to do is seek sureties, and also there's the question of to what right does this developer, can they transfer their roles and responsibilities to someone else? Can they simply sell them? And so all of those issues come up, because a developer could say, I'll sell a sweetheart deal and I'll just sell it off to some crazy unknown firm, and they'll pay me a lot of money, and then the government can worry about it. Financial risk. We went through this in 2008. Deutsche Bank withdrew their commitment. And you may also find that the financial structure of the deal is sufficient, is not sufficiently robust to withstand stress, so you have to submit it to stress tests. And you may have this is an interesting one, of refinancing. Because what happened is in the UK, deals that were done 10, 15 years ago were done at 7%. And then in comes a market at 3%. Now, these developers refinanced, did a wraparound. They kept the 7%, but then they wrapped it around with a 3%, walked away with a pile of money, which was a huge political embarrassment to the government. So now the government is saying, at any refinancing, we take 50% of whatever the benefits are. So refinancing risk, but it also operates the opposite way, too. Although I don't think we're going to see rates go much lower than they are now. And then there's default risk, breach of contract, when they do not meet their obligations. And you've got to distinguish between material rise and non-material. So material gives rise to termination. Non-material is an obligation to rectify, but not on their own, allowing other party to terminate. So in other words, you can't just allow them to terminate because they don't like the project. And in all cases, the government will specify their rights to step in and make whole. They'll never want to do that, but it may happen. It'll make, like in the Sky Bridge, they had to step in and buy the bridge. Now, the developer walked away with a pile of money. Contractor did well, developer did well, and the public had to pay the cost of stepping in. So you can see that now when the ball gets rolling, we've got a governance issue. We have two partners, we've got lenders, we've got equity investors, and we have to have a governing structure. This thing isn't on remote control. And so the contract reporting and monitoring lies at the heart of management and incredibly good information gathering at all times. So you've got this now ongoing process. So this framework has to measure and assess the ongoing business viability to meet the requirements. So you have to know, is this thing, is it in fact meeting its financial targets? No, it's not. We're finding that we're 50% off on highway usage. You've got this, suggestions as to how these indicators should be reported. So how do we report the temperature of the roof? How do we monitor it? How do we assess it? Indicators of reporting quality to ensure the contractor is meeting performance requirements. Are the washrooms clean? Is a plugged toilet being unplugged within the 15-minute stipulation, etc.? I mean, it gets down to those kind of minutia, that level, because what happens is the staff say the toilets are dirty, then you've paid these people to keep the toilets clean. Aspects that should be periodically audited, and the structure of the reporting. How do you do all this reporting? Now, what you don't want is to have all of this paperwork and inability to really get through and deal with the problems. And the government doesn't do this. All of this is done by the developer.
Well, the developer has to, the government does monitoring, don't they? You said the government doesn't do this, it's all done by the developer.
They don't collect the information. Sorry.
But they provide the reports.
The reports go to your partner. More importantly, they should go to your debt holders. They're much more interested You know, when you say I report to government, yeah, oh yeah, I sent it to them, I don't know if they've ever read it. The more important thing is your debt holders are looking at this, because they're the people who, if there's a problem, government says, yeah, so what, the toilets are stuck. Let them suffer like they do in all our other buildings. Why should they have their toilets unplugged every 15 minutes, you know? Whereas the debt holder is saying, just a minute, if this is systemic, then we got a problem, because, so what you find is the governance framework, the people that are really at the table watching this are going to be your debt holders.
The debt holders are worried that the government may step in and put in fines or penalties.
That's right. Yeah, and you say, but I gave you this information. You've had it for 2 years. Yeah, but that's why we fired the guy. He never read them. So now we look at them, scares the hell out of us, and we're stepping, you know, we're going to impose, you know, certain penalties. You know, that's, I'm being maybe unfair to government, but I'm just saying that it's not untypical for that to happen, because my experience with governments, they don't have very good institutional memories. So behind it, the great thing about this model is the real monitors of the model of performance are the debt holders. So we'll stop at 10:30?
Yeah.
So here's what the shareholder agreements, there's all agree.
We can stop now.
Okay,
Okay?
yeah.
Look, take a 10-minute break. Back here, 22.
Oh, I'm okay. All right.
I was thinking about the project that I did here in DC, and I think the reason somebody was probably ingenious or basic, but we had so many different stakeholder groups that didn't really talk to each other. There's and I think that's what we have to do, you know, for many systems.
东北人，我操！差点就走我操！4个男的，他们没通知我们，没跟我们说，那我给你商量好了呀。我操！
Yeah, all this terrible stuff that you take out of all the different places all around.
哎呦！哎，你别吼，别走啊！
What they found with the
走，我怎么办？我没见。
Midway, and they also discovered they could not do it on they could only do it on availability. They couldn't be precise. And then as they got into it, they realized that down the line they had So all these uncertainties, I said, you know what, we got to go with digital approach. Yeah, there were too many uncertainties, so they ended up saying, okay, we'll buy diesel with a life maybe of 15 years, which is probably.
它是线啊？哦，可是线还是卖钱的。
It is going to be like a lot of pushback. The government has a lot better.
And they also found that at the pricing they'd have to charge people who would use it. They'd say, you know, prove us an account, we can do it cheaper than that. So they said, you know, we're going to have to take we need a link to the airport, high-speed link. It's not going to be a paying problem. But the economic benefit, so, yeah, they had to back, and they had a lot of stakeholders involved in a number of states. And the city helped.
Sprawl exit page project, we get a lot of pushback on that. Whereas, you know, the economic development folks would rather have that. Let that road.
Yeah.
Right.
Well, in this hospital, we had a big issue because the city said, well, given the scope of the hospital, we want an and the throughway don't
没有，你发现吗？刚刚我那个闹树苗，我在找他们，你知道吗？
it would just absolutely screw up the traffic movement. The city said, no, you're going, that's a condition of getting your site plan approval. Now, the developer's not going to take that risk, because the developer said, that's yours. So, yeah, you're right to get into these incredible issues. The one I'm working on, writing a case on is a hospital where they did a PPP and they were very keen on living in the community, rich and engaged, except that the local council moved on to other politics. The new council ran on the ground of
，Christy，
because you know what
是不是你的？
you get elected, you oppose something. So she won on the basis
Witness
of
first.
stopping the
Thank you.
and behind the scenes, she's saying, I really support you, but publicly I'm not happy.
你给我播的那个 beginner 的那个照片，
这个我都有。
你说的是哪一套？为什么你把球抛这个三了？对，我也想问。不是。
It's interesting stuff.
It is. There's so many permutations.
Yeah, I it's a lot to dump us.
这个照片，我看到了，我有天他不是大子吗？就是他要有自己的孩子，记得回国要跟男朋友说一次吧。好害羞哦。男生很多穿的样，男生很简单，男生穿在那里就好了。男你要看哪个？昨天那个给他给他们看的。我也没有看他说我看了。是这个吗？大家都不一样。这个穿123块吗？删掉我了！删掉。操你不要乱放照片在里面看，那这样怎么办？我偷了他的话，我家没有人看，过了90分钟。而且今天大部分但是有人也没有在。怎么了？是借给你看的那个放不出来，给 A 热看的那个有些总有一些人，你知道吗？不是他很痛，他们很痛。我昨天晚上做他那个，跟我说给我一个 app， 很痛，视频还有屏幕是那样的视频。你真的很龌龊，你白天给我PS，你很龌龊。出来的，出来的，马上不是。